Good morning, and welcome to the Global Business Talk Show. My name is Jeanette Sinclair. We promise you to always bring you the best, the expert on their field to talk to you about what's going on in the community. Today, we would have somebody who I admire because of her courage, her tenacity, and her willingness to do the right thing for the community. She just started a new endeavor, and I am so thrilled and excited to see young women in the forefront to help the community at large, brown, black people, to deal with the healthcare inequalities that exist in this country. As you all know, I'm a breast cancer survivor, and whenever I have the opportunity, I would always talk about the fact that right now, if I have insurance, it's because of Sheila Sheffield McCormick. But she's not only helping me, she's not only helping the people that she knows, she's also helping the people that she doesn't know. Good morning and welcome to the Global Business Talk Show. How are you, Sheila?
I'm good. Good morning, Janan. Thank you for having me on.
Well, your family. So it's always good to find out from you what's going on in the health community. As many of you know, Sheila is a healthcare executive, and she's also the CEO of Trinity Healthcare Services. And this organization's been around for a long time. Whether you're talking to people in New York, whether you're talking to people in Florida, and when I'm in Florida, we're talking about Miami, Broward, and Palm Beach. You know Sheila Sheffield McCormick, and she also ran for Congress last year. Now, she never stops. Sheila, you and a few young ladies started the health, the essential community health. Tell us a little about why you decided to start this.
Well, it's about 12 of us. 12 of us who are doctors, healthcare executives, nurses, nurse practitioners, and just professional women in the community, Broward, Palm Beach, and Miami area. We were noticing that during COVID, as hard as we were working to combat COVID, we did not see these efforts actually precipitating into our neighborhoods. And so
Mhm.
we said, we have to come together as a unified front and make sure that these resources are coming down into the community. And that's when we birthed Essential Community Health. I am a co founder along with Linda Joseph, and we
Mhm.
have 12 women of color who are on our board, which is an
Mhm.
exceptional movement. You usually don't find that many women of color who are on a nonprofit board. But we thought it was very important for us to have that kind of oversight to make sure that our agenda and our mission was being satisfied. And the women who are on the board are really a diverse group. Our mission is to provide health care and COVID relief into the community. So we do this by having floating clinics. We have great affiliations with churches and also the Department of Health and other organizations. And right now, our first initiative is to float into different areas and do COVID testing, COVID education, and we're also giving out masks to the community.
One of the things that I liked about how you started explaining this endeavor is that you say it's a community um, initiative, and yet you have only women. And I think in one of our discussions, you said it's because the women are the one who take care of the kids and also are the husband. So it's not like it's a bunch of women who decide that they just want to do something and leave the men behind. Because I know that you have a couple of men who are always strong standing behind you.
Yes.
So go ahead.
Yes, we have so we came together as women because it's a tight knit group and we realized how much of the family we're taking care of. So when
Mhm.
you're responsible for taking care of the health of your family, cooking and just taking care of the home, you're always asking your family, like, did you take your vitamins? Are you protecting
Mhm.
yourself? So we found that we're taking care of every generation from our parents to our
Mhm.
spouses to our sons. And
Mhm.
that's why we said, you know what, we need to make this a female led initiative, although we have many men who are on our staff and who are actually directing our activities.
Perfect. And you also spoke to me about comorbidity because now it's COVID. The initiative started because of COVID. And I must tell you, we're going to talk about comorbidity. The reason why is because the first 6 months, I never left my house. I never left my house, even when I needed, because I knew that for my last cancer, which was lung cancer, I was one of those people who would most likely be affected or will catch COVID. So part of what you mentioned is the fact that many of the black and brown folks in the community already have comorbidity. They are suffering from diabetes, lupus, and a bunch of other diseases. Why do you think it's so important for somebody who has pre-existing conditions or those kind of disease for them to know about your organization and to uh, come up with how we need to help more people?
Well, what we found was that people who have comorbidities, when combined with COVID, they had
Hmm.
higher hospitalization rates,
Okay.
readmissions into the hospital, and fatality. And so that's a huge issue. And the second thing that we found out is most of the people in our community don't know that they are the ones who have diabetes, high blood pressure. And this stands for not even just people of color, but people of, if you're an American and you don't have insurance, or your insurance, you lost your job and you don't have insurance, you don't know where you stand right now. And with the stress of COVID and this the culture that we've been going through, a lot of people have actually gained some comorbidities. They have high blood pressure now. They're dealing with things like anxiety that are
Hmm.
triggering all these other health issues. And they're not aware. They're not aware because they have no insurance. They haven't gone to their doctor because they're scared that if they go to the doctor, they might be exposed. And so
Hmm.
this is why we said we need to float. And the idea of floating is we can actually set up a clinic and start testing for that. We can screen to see if you have diabetes. We're screening to see if you have high blood pressure. And we're even screening for mental illness. And when I say mental illness, a lot of people think that it's going to be extreme things like schizophrenia, not realizing that when you have anxiety for a long time, that becomes an issue. That could become an issue where you need to have treatment, or even it could turn into depression. So there's a lot of things that we're dealing with in our families, especially with our kids who are staying home and some of the kids who are going to school who are living in fear that we're not aware of right now. So we thought it was imperative for us to float into the neighborhoods and start talking to people, especially in Florida. Not everyone is able to get to a doctor that's close to them, especially in low income areas or areas that are further north that are isolated.
You talked about anxiety, and I mention often that sometimes it's hard for you to detect if somebody is depressed. But then I know that I am suffering of anxiety because for the longest time I didn't want to go out for the reason that you said. I don't want to go to the hospital and then catch COVID at that hospital. So beforehand, I'm already thinking. So my mental health, or should I say my mental wellness, is not there. And I feel that when people are anxious or when people are depressed, their immune system gets to be lower.
Yes, yes. Your mental state has an impact on your whole body.
Physical.
If you're
Hmm.
anxious, you're going to see high blood pressure start settling in. You can't control your blood pressure. You're going to the doctor, different medications. And these are
Hmm.
things that I've experienced personally, not in my life, but even looking at my parents.
Hmm.
They're older, they want to go out, they want to see their family. But then you're anxious about, if I don't see them, how are they doing? If I do see them, can I get sick? And those are we seeing where we see the blood pressure is becoming hard to manage. So
Hmm.
that anxiety, especially for our culture, and I say our culture because I mean, when I grew up, I don't remember us talking about mental health. I remember us talking about high blood pressure, but nobody said anxiety, or worry wasn't one of those things. If anything, we thought anxiety was being cautious, I'm just being very cautious, but it's not. It's anxiety and us not knowing how to cope. And so we're trying to, tip the scale for everyone. This new generation is more conscious about mental health. They're more conscious about health, period. So we want to make sure that the older generations who may not have been able to experience this new awareness is now having access to that so we can have the whole family healthy.
Tipping the scale, closing the gap. Why is there such a big gap in the way black and brown people receive healthcare or can afford healthcare in Broward County?
It has a lot to do with the history of us in America.
Mm-hmm.
For example, if you look at the anxieties that are coming now with the vaccination, do we vaccinate or not vaccinate? That has a
Mm-hmm.
lot to do with the experimentation that's been done on African Americans in the United States, especially during Tuskegee era, where they were doing a lot of experiments. And you remember those things. It really wasn't
Mm-hmm.
kind of like an apology or a recompense where they made up for that. So people who lived through that experience, especially the older people who they're trying to funnel in for vaccination, they remember that. And so how do you get someone who lived it, experienced it, and say, just forget about that now and take this vaccine? That's where vaccination education becomes highly important. And then you're dealing with their children who heard these stories. And that's why it's a barrier, because we've experienced negative activity. Then you have another group who is fairly newer to the community or to the country. And being newer to the country, they're not fully sure of how to access healthcare to take care of themselves. Be it if you come from another country and you're used to doing holistic remedies, which I totally believe in holistic remedies, but there's a point where you have to switch over and be able to function within the healthcare system to get some access to things that you need. And that's really where the disconnect is for communities that are newer to the country. How do you have access to the system? Who do you call? Do you call the Department of Health? Is your doctor going to direct you? Are you seeing a doctor? A lot of the times they're just so focused, or we're so focused on working that we're not
Mm-hmm.
really mastering the system. But the
Mm-hmm.
system's hard to navigate. I mean, that's how I got into this anyhow. I was helping businesses and healthcare agencies learn how to navigate healthcare. So
Mm-hmm.
regular people, how could we know, how to find these resources? So that's what Essential Health is here to do, to help us bridge that gap and get resources to communities who just don't know how to navigate it.
I love the word essential, and as you mentioned, is one of the problem is probably cultural. So I do believe in holistic medicine, and people who know me understand that I would embrace the holistic, but I won't let go of the traditional medicine. And if anybody is listening to us, they know that even if you want to take your tea, you want to do your yoga, but it's still good for you to have a blood test. It's still good for you to have a primary doctor and reestablish that trust. And I really mean that trust because I feel as though as a human being, you have the power to combine both medicine, both the holistic and you cannot bash one or the other, you
But I
know?
think it's imperative. It's very important that we do both. I see for myself, I make tea. I've even given you my tea or
Mm-hmm.
my concoction.
Your concoction.
My concoction. So it's a blend of turmeric, lime, lemon, and a whole bunch of ginger. And
Mm-hmm.
even when I take the time out to drink that, if I put it
Mm-hmm.
into my tea, if I make it warm, if I make it cold, and I'll tell you this, sometimes I even put it with a mix of Prosecco and champagne. But that's
Yes.
neither here nor there. But the time that I spend to actually make it and smell the fumes and sit down, it's not only edifying me with nourishment and vitamins,
Mm-hmm.
but it is a healing spiritually and emotionally where you get to come down. There's something about the aromas that is helping me reset. But then again, I am still doing, if I need medication, you need to get
Mm-hmm.
antibiotics, whatever it is, the combination. And so that's why I say that we need both. A
Yes.
daily lifestyle of being healthy with natural medicines, I think is very important. But once you come out of that area where you're not healthy and you do need extra care, you have to be in the hands of a primary physician at all times.
Yes.
Your primary physician, your regular checkups, he will be the indicator to tell you if you need this or that. And that's where we're trying to get people to realize we don't want you to let go of your culture. That is us.
Mm-hmm.
This is what we do. I
Mm-hmm.
remember growing up as a little girl, and my grandmother would peel the lemon skins and she would
Mm-hmm.
leave it there for the aroma. She would
Yes.
boil all of it and you could smell it. And it
Mm-hmm.
was to help everybody breathe better. So that is our culture. That is us. And we should embrace that. But we also need to be able to navigate and embrace medication when necessary. And so I think our generations can bridge the gap. Our
Mm-hmm.
conversations in the community can bridge the gap, and working with elected officials along with the State Department and churches, we can all bridge this gap. And so COVID is actually an exceptional moment for us. This is
Yes.
where we can make up for the losses we had in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we're looking to do. Let's bridge it finally. Let's promote health, not just for COVID, but long term. let's make sure that when we're getting older, I want to grow to be 105 and see everyone healthy and not be worrying about, I want us all to still have our community. Our family is our community. Our generations are our community. And even though we suffered tremendous loss with losing so many people during COVID, let's turn that tide. Let's get vaccinated and let's get healthy and make sure that the next years of our lives, we have our family.
And we spoke about trust. When we think about how we grew up, and anybody who's from the island, sometimes they see their mother, they would see their grandmother have a pot of ginger all day boiling, and they're drinking it, and it's good. But then we miss out on the vitamins as well. And I realize that many people who whose immune system is not strong, it's because either they're not taking their vitamins, or they're not going to the doctor for them to know about their deficiency. I recently found out that I'm so low on vitamin D. And why am I low on vitamin D? I live in sunny Florida. So now, would I need to say, well, the doctor is trying to get me on the vitamin D pill, or maybe I should have gone to outside to get my own vitamin D? So I think that is something very important, and I would love for my audience to understand that holistic medicine is not you going to see the holistic doctor when you're sick. It's something that needs to be going all year long. Because I think, Sheila, you started your concoction even before COVID. You already
Yes.
had that recipe that you were like, oh, I need this because it helps me with energy and stuff like that.
Yeah, I did because my family suffers from asthma. And
Okay,
so when I was a little girl, I had asthma. My brother had asthma. My daughter has asthma. And
okay,
so what I realized is when I was drinking hot tea, when I would have ginger, it would clear me up. So I
okay.
didn't want to take too much. It's kind of like preventative because you never know what allergy season is going to be outside.
Hmm.
That's how I live. Like, I never know what's going to trigger the asthma, or going up the flight of stairs today might be difficult for me. So ginger tea, it was just preventative. And when I traveled, I saw that especially I traveled to Asia, and they gave me this thing called lomi lomi. And I was like, what is this? And before you can even get onto the island, they gave you like a welcome drink. And it
Hmm.
was my concoction. And I said, oh, you see?
Are
And I
you?
said, I make this like every day at home. And they're like, yes, so open up the lungs. It helps purify you. And I said, oh, you see? Like the things that we learn from our ancestors, they're right. Because if I travel all the way to Asia, they're doing the same thing and they're here. So it just confirmed how we have to preserve our culture, preserve the remedies that we have, be proud of them, and join people together. What's interesting is when you have an island background, or you have a background that's outside the United States, we ate more organic foods.
True.
You grow up, you make your own food. There's not like fertilizer. Whatever God provides today in the soil, that's what you get. There's not
It's
really
fresh.
variety. Right. And so that food is more nutrients dense. And then when we come to the United States and we're working all the time, and just to have an abundant food supply as we have now, it's going to take some GMOs and it's not going to be the same. So a lot of people have a hard time understanding, where does the deficiency come from? I never had this before. COVID with the vitamin D, a lot of people stay home. So we're not outside like we used to do, walking and talking, enjoying the rays of the sun. And so this is where we have to kind of bring people back to say, hey, our lifestyle has changed during COVID. It's been more than a year. And so more than likely your body has actually reacted to those changes. And let's find out what's going on.
So when I asked you the question about the disparity, so you started with the cultures and how we see things, and I want to go into economy. Is economy a big factor for the reason why not only we don't have insurance, and now that you mentioned about the nutrition, so I'm thinking, if I don't have any money, so I'm not eating healthy, or should I say I'm not eating the right thing? So how do you think the economy plays a big role in not only the disparities but also the comorbidity? Because let's say that I'm a low income family and I do have food stamp. Now, if I have food stamp, does that mean that I'm eating healthy?
Well, that's a question that a lot of people have been debating. And I don't think necessarily because you have food stamps, you're not eating healthy. But really, what is next to you?
Hmm.
What is close to you? We know that there's a lot of food deserts that we've been working on overcoming those challenges. One of the reasons I actually ran for Congress was because I noticed that there's a lot of things we have at our disposal that aren't being linked, and there isn't enough federal funding to actually have these things grow more. And what I mean by that, if you look at some of the districts within South Florida, you have areas that have a great amount of land that's being used to produce produce. And those
Hmm.
people in those areas, they don't have access to healthcare professionals, attorneys. And so even if we had put more funding towards, helping their economy so they could be building more food farms and bringing the food into the community and we exchange services, then you would see some of those food deserts actually diminish. And so those initiatives aren't there. And that's what we're pushing to bridge the gap, which is a unique place because there's not a lot of places where you can find a whole bunch of farmland and a whole bunch of people who can live off the farm and eat the food fresh and then have a city right next to it. And that's what we have to try and bridge. So the economics plays a huge role in it. If you don't have enough money to purchase food, healthy foods, if you don't have enough money to actually eat a consistent healthy diet, that's another part. Right now, a lot of people are in line to pick up food. And that's the truth of where we're living right now. There just isn't enough food for larger families who are used to feeding, multiple kids or maybe one kid. I talk to a lot of moms who are feeding their sons who are playing football, who are growing. And
Hmm.
that's a huge gap when you have a child who's growing at that speed and that magnitude. Even my son, I felt like he was eating us at a house at home and he just shot up. So these are the things that, you're looking to make sure that you have enough money to support to help them grow. So finance has definitely been a huge issue when it comes to health. Even paying for receiving help
Hmm.
is a big issue. Paying for insurance, and a lot of times even you go to the emergency room, that bill that comes back to you. Going to urgent care. Some urgent cares won't take you if you don't have insurance. Those are the blocks from us accessing healthcare that we have to do something about.
And now with COVID, many people have lost their jobs. So we have people who were working not having the proper health insurance, and now they have people who are anxious, depressed, probably drinking, and still no life insurance, no health insurance. How are we gonna address this issue for our black and brown community?
It's going to come down to federal funding. The state right now is putting all of its resources into trying to combat COVID. We really have to push for more initiatives. That stimulus package that's coming down, we need to really continue that push to make sure that we're rewriting what healthcare looks like in America. Before this pandemic, it was terrible. This pandemic has shed a light on what we knew what was going on, what we've been fighting about. Personally, people tell me all the time, Sheila, you're always arguing and you have such a big mouth when it comes to this. But I said it's a
Hmm.
blessing because if I'm not there arguing, who else will be? Because
Hmm.
people don't feel it. I think we have to understand what the real disconnect is. Sometimes you find executives who are in these hospital systems in healthcare who are very wealthy. They don't know what it is to come home and not have food at their disposal or don't have health care. That's another thing we have to think about. If you work in healthcare, you have some of the best healthcare because you have access to it. Not knowing the regular person who has healthcare, you have all these co-pays and you go to the doctor, you come back, you're like, how did I get a bill if I have insurance for
Hmm.
$5,000? And where do
Hmm.
I get $5,000? So
That's right.
that's what we have to do. Keep pushing those legislative agendas and make sure that they're passed. Keep writing those policies. And I do see the change coming. We just have to strategically
No.
come together as a community and have a unified push. It just can't be left to legislators.
So you're being hopeful, and I'm even thinking about families where a mother or a father has a child who's sick, and then they're thinking, should I take him to the hospital and get a bill, or try to do home remedy? And those are the challenges, I think, because every day you have to make that choice. And I think it will be easy for somebody like you, myself, or maybe some of the people listening to us to say, well, obviously you need to take that child to the hospital. But then you have to think about other issues. If that person was saving for a house and then the credit. So as a whole, it brings a lot of problems. And then when you have to make a decision, sometimes I don't think you make the right decision.
Yeah, and I think there's another factor that is included in that aside of financial. Another factor is, to be honest with you, our community has been discriminated when it comes to healthcare. So I'm sure anybody can tell you, I've gone to the doctor, they misdiagnosed me. and this happened to me. So why am I going to take my kid to be misdiagnosed and keep bringing me back and forth to make more money off of me? This is a conversation I hear all the time,
All the time.
and they're not lying. I mean, we come in and we say we have a headache. We say we're not feeling well. They say, oh, it's stress. We're being misdiagnosed, or our children may not be feeling well. And our kids are going to be the ones who are diagnosed with schizophrenia and not diagnosed with anxiety. So that fear of, I'm going to sacrifice funding, I'm gonna now sacrifice my child being diagnosed with the wrong thing, not being listened, missing work. These are all the fears that are real fears. And as a country, we have to deal with that. These fears didn't come out of anywhere. And that's when we have to notice that our past is in our present. So how do we get over this? We have to recompense. We have to make it right. It's just as if you go out and you're eating McDonald's and eating whatever you want, and then you're saying, well, I want to still fit into my clothes. Well, I suggest you go to the gym. You have to make up for that.
That's right.
Right? So the healthcare system as a country, we have to make up for that. And that's going to be through education.
Yes. And Essential is doing something that I think is very important, is bringing the community together. So whether it's the media, whether it's the pastors, the local government, as well as the state, and you even mentioned federal funding, so that we can create that trust when people think, okay, I'm taking my child to the hospital, and they're only gonna tell me like he has a headache, and then they're gonna send me a $5,000 bill for just telling me something that I've already known. That trust needs to get back to the right place. So you are working very hard with the churches. Tell me what Essential is doing with the churches and how are you helping them. And I'm going to tell people that during COVID, you were in the forefront. And I know that's the concussion that keep you alive and you didn't catch it because you were out there distributing masks, distributing food. And I want to give a shout out to our friend Gerline from Casa Champette. And I was telling her yesterday, I said, Sheila has something for you. But I didn't tell her what it was yet. I said, well, you need to give her a call. But during the COVID season, not only you distributed masks, you distributed food, and it wasn't poor quality that you were giving out. So not only you went out with your team and you were giving people fish, Sheila. Fish is a good thing. But how is Essential working with the pastors now?
Oh, well, everything's about integrity, right? We want to give you your integrity and your dignity, even though we're in a bad area, a bad season. So in preserving the integrity of life and the dignity of life, we partnered with a lot of the different churches and different coalition and alliances. And so the pastors, we're even doing health fairs with the pastors. I've been advocating for the pastors to get more resources to do the education, to do the outreach, but specifically taking the time out to do education with the pastors is imperative. Our pastors are trusted. Our pastors have the ears and eyes of a lot of people in the community. So we have to educate them. And not only do we have to educate them, we do have to give them the proper budget because they can get the people to come in and get vaccinated. If we're going to reach herd immunity, we have to talk to the pastors. We can't just tell them at this time, bring in people. That's not how it works. Your pastor talks to you. He explains things to you.
Sure.
We have to educate the pastors and give them the equipment they need to do the job. And so
Yes.
I've been advocating and partnering with them for them to get the resources and for us also to have a mobile clinic where we're floating our different resources to the community and giving them what they need, which has been, it's been wonderful because, I love people and I love talking to people. So when you talk to the pastors, one of the things they said when they met our board was they're like, Sheila, when you have all these Black women, and when Black women tell you vaccinate Big Mama, we're vaccinating because they would never vaccinate Big Mama if it wasn't safe. And I said, thank you. But I remember that part where, Black women are the cornerstone in the family. And it's true. I wasn't comfortable with the vaccine at first. I said, I need more information. I need to know if it's being disseminated. But once I started seeing what was going on, I said, all right, it's time. I told my parents, let's go. You're getting vaccinated. Right now there is, conflicts and there's a shortage, to be honest with you. But we need to prepare. So it's not when the vaccine's ready tomorrow that we say, all right, everybody, let's get vaccinated. The education, the conversation starts now. The conversation needs to start where there's a low pressure environment. Right now, because there's limited access, it is low pressure. So this is when you come in and you have the calm conversation. This is the vaccine that's out. This is what happened. This is the results. There are different manufacturers, and we have a conversation about manufacturers. What is it doing? And this is where we need to be right now. So our initiative with the pastors is really to provide a unique form of healthcare right in frequently frequented areas like church.
The church is, I would say, the most important place where people have the right to assemble. And not only because you have the right to assembly, but you go there with love. You go there with trust. You trust your pastors, you trust God. And just like you said in the beginning, I was a little, uh, you know, not comfortable with the vaccine. But like you said, this conversation needs to happen now. It's not long are the days where you just rally up people like they are goats and you said, let's go do it. And if that person is not educated, if you didn't start that conversation where people would understand that, okay, something is happening and this is my condition and maybe this is how I need to go forward. And I put at the bottom the information on how to request the mask. But I'm gonna give you the liberty to give your phone number because your phone number is like mine, public, or people could reach out to you because you're a people person. You want people to have access with you. You want people to talk to you. And when I say talk to you, oftentimes when you are in business, somebody will say, "Well, Sheila, I need 10 masks." And Sheila says, well, you could only have five. But we need to have that conversation. It's not a matter of like, well, I don't understand how come I asked her for 10 and she only gave me five.
Yeah, it's a need. I understand when people are in need and they need it now. I
Hmm.
totally get it, because we're all stressed out. To be honest with you, if you're serving the community, this is a time where there's so much stress because you don't have resources. So I try to do my best in acquiring and securing. We recently secured 90,000 masks that was
Hmm.
sent to us from the Florida Health Department, which was awesome. They originally told me, okay, we're going to send 75,000, bring it to the community. But
Hmm.
when the shipment came, I wasn't in the office and I got called. And they're
Hmm.
like, do you know it's 90,000? And I said, oh my God, which was a blessing for us. So we are any organization that needs masks. We have a form to fill out. You can contact me on my cell phone, which is 954-668-5358. But that's what we're here to do. We're here to partner and serve. And if the biggest mouth in the room is going to get the resources, well, then let's let Essential Health be the biggest mouth in that room, and let's keep securing more resources. So our hope is that this is the first step that we have with the affiliation with the state departments, with the federal agencies, where we can just start getting more masks and put them in the hands, more resources, put them in the hands of the people who need it. And I strongly believe that this experience, although it's been a difficult experience, is going to position us in a better place for health.
Yes, indeed. I think we need to have better, uh, a better healthcare system. We need,
Canon.
excuse me?
There's like an echo or vibration.
Yes, I think that we're having some technical difficulties. So I'm gonna put my banner out until we could start back.